Okay. Hi, my name is Annika Schneider. I am the Director of Exhibitions and Artist Programs at Minnesota Center for Book Arts. So I'm going to start by sharing some slides to go over a little bit about MCBA and then the program and then the application and the specifics. If you have any questions, just let me know, put it in the chat, or go ahead and ask. We'll also have time for questions at the end if you have anything specific or specific related to your application. So I will go ahead and share the slides now. Okay, so this is the first info session for the 2025 McKnight Fellowship for Book Artists application cycle. A little bit about MCBA, if you're not familiar. MCBA is the largest book art center of its kind, celebrating the book as a dynamic contemporary art form that takes many shapes. We create access to specialized book arts tools, equipment, knowledge, and support interdisciplinary artistic development, expanding opportunities for people who have been underrepresented in the field, and present exhibitions and educational programs that create connections around art of the book, innovation, and advance the future of the field. Okay. We are located in the Open Book Building on Washington Avenue in Minneapolis. Located in the same building is the Loft Literary Center and Milkweed Editions, if you are familiar with either of those nonprofits. Here is the lobby of our building. We also have a shop with a consignment artist program. This is the main gallery where the McKnight Fellows will have an exhibition. It's a biannual exhibition with groups of four McKnight Fellows. The upcoming exhibition will open at the end of this month with our 2022 and 2023 fellows in the main gallery. So please stop by to get a view of what McKnight Fellowships are doing in this program. We also have an Outlook Gallery exhibition space, which is a window space along Washington Ave and a very unique exhibition space. We will be having a call for that this spring as well for exhibitions. Our studios include an extensive letterpress studio. We also have a couple etching presses. If you do relief printing or other kinds of printmaking. We have paper making and marbling studios. We actually have two spaces for paper making, a bindery, and more. Okay, a little bit about the McKnight Foundation. So the McKnight Fellowship for Book Artists supports the conviction that arts cannot flourish or enhance community life without the ideas, energy, and drive of individual artists, and that artists cannot make these contributions without unfettered creative time. So this is a specific set of fellowships. With the McKnight Foundation, there are actually 15 different disciplines. So if you are an interdisciplinary artist, you should look at what the different disciplines of McKnight Fellowships to find the best match for you. So there's also a culture bearers one, a visual artist one, a fiber artist one, and you can only apply to one McKnight Fellowship in one discipline per year. So the application cycle for the Book Arts Fellowship. So applications open December 1st and they will close, oh, I missed a date. So February 26th, 2025 at 11:59 p.m. So it is important to get it done by 11:59. The application, which is through Submittable, which I'll talk about, will close at that time. On April 6th, a panel of three jurors will meet to discuss the applications. They will have reviewed them remotely online through Submittable beforehand. They will discuss the applications and select 4 to 6, depending on what they feel the need is, to do studio visits with on Zoom. So the first round, they meet to select which applications they are going to do virtual studio visits with. If you are selected to move forward for that round, you will be contacted immediately after on Monday, April 7th for more details about how to prepare for the studio visits, what potential time slots are, and all of that. The virtual studio visits will be on Saturday, April 26th and Sunday, April 27th. Um, from those 4 to 6 people who get studio visits, 2 people will be selected as the McKnight Fellows. They will be notified immediately after on Monday, April 28th, with a phone call from me to let them know. And then the fellows will be publicly announced on Friday, May 30th. And then the official fellowship period runs from August 2025 to July 2026. But in many ways, this is more than a 1 year fellowship, although the official year is only 1 year, because there are other things that expand beyond, that will happen beyond July 2026, such as the exhibition, because that happens every other year with sets of 4 fellows. So fellows for this coming year will have their exhibition in, let me see if I'm doing the math. So we just did 2022 fellows and 2023 fellows are this year. So 2024 and 2025 fellows will be in 2027 will be their exhibition. And then with the fellowship, you also get 2 years of studio access at MCBA. So that will run actually through July 2027 for your studio access. Okay. The McKnight Fellowship for Book Artists is for mid-career book artists living in Minnesota for at least 1 year prior to the application deadline, artists whose work falls within a book arts context, artists who are over the age of 18, and artists who are willing to participate in all aspects of the fellowship program, including studio visits, public panel, and meetings with MCBA staff. And it is a requirement of the McKnight Foundation that you must also reside in Minnesota for your full fellowship year, so through July 2026. The McKnight Fellowship for Book Artists is for artists who are not related to staff or board of the McKnight Foundation or MCBA, artists who have not received a McKnight Fellowship for 5 years, so since 2020 in any discipline. So if you received a McKnight Fellowship for visual artists through MCAD in 2021, you are not eligible to apply yet again for any McKnight Fellowship. You must be you cannot be a student enrolled in a degree seeking program. Questions have come up. If you are taking the occasional class in a continuing ed program, on a break in student teaching from a certain program, but not currently enrolled in students, and past that, you can apply. I'm happy to answer any specific questions in regards to that for specific situations. And then applicants can only apply for one McKnight Fellowship per year. So if you are applying for our fellowship, you cannot also apply for textile centers, Indigenous roots, high points, anything like that. All right, so the 2 McKnight Fellowships for book artists receive $25,000 in unrestricted fellowship funding. This is a $25,000 payment. We do not ask for any receipts or records of what that is spent on. That is just for you as an artist to use at your discretion. You will receive 2 virtual studio visits and 1 in-person studio visit and panel discussion with an art critic, curator, other arts professional of your choice, a $1,000 travel stipend, $2,000 educational stipend for workshops at MCBA or private tutorials, other things towards your education, 2 years of access to MCBA studios and equipment, the opportunity to attend an artist residency within 2 years of the fellowship. This is another thing that would probably happen after your official fellowship year, so after July 2026, and then a group exhibition in MCBA's main gallery. So a little bit, because book arts is such an interdisciplinary art form, so a little bit about what is book art and what we are thinking about with book art. MCBA has an expansive definition of book art. So it's an interdisciplinary art form. MCBA defines it as book art as a contained narrative that serves as a multifaceted method of communication. Book art is a family of processes that includes but is not limited to letterpress printing, screen printing, intaglio, paper decoration, box making, book binding, paper making, and truly so much more. Here are some examples of what we consider to be book art. So you can see anything from something that looks like a book with pages to something that looks much more installation based. More examples. Okay, who is mid-career? This is always tricky to really pin down because everybody's career trajectory looks different. But to give you a little bit of an idea of what the McKnight Foundation considers mid-career, is that you have at least 8 years of professional experience, preferably in group or solo exhibitions or some way to show that you have been sustaining your artistic practice for at least 8 years. Mid-career artists demonstrate a sustained level of accomplishment, commitment, and excellence in their work. Exhibitions undertaken as part of a degree-seeking program at an institution of higher learning are not considered. So if you were in a BFA program for 4 years studying book art, that does not count towards your total of like 8 years of career experience. It should be after your student experience. And then McKnight Artist Fellowships are also not considered a Lifetime Achievement Award and are not about the age of an applicant. Rather, these fellowships are a recognition of the recipient's significant body of work, creative achievement, and their sustained contribution to their artistic field and to Minnesota's arts ecosystem. Okay, so a little bit more about what will actually go in the application. So first of all, you have to show that you have lived in Minnesota for a year. So prior to February 2026, 2024, which is 1 year from the application deadline, this coming February. So proof of residency can include Minnesota's driver's license, ID card, utility bill in the applicant's name, lease or tribal ID. And then award winners must reside in the state of Minnesota for the duration of their fellowship. And then fellows who travel for work outside of state during the fellowship year should be in the state for at least 6 months, 183 days, and should have a plan to return to Minnesota during that fellowship year. Okay, so what the panel looks for. So I mentioned the selection panel is a panel of 3 jurors who are not Minnesota based. There is a requirement of the fellowship that the jurors are not Minnesota based to try to be as fair as possible so that they are less likely to personally know people who are applicants. They are selected due to diversity in background, geography, diversity in the field. So I try to select a jury panel that includes makers, curators, collecting librarians to have sort of different aspects of the book arts field represented within the jury. So the jury will be looking at the work samples, artist statement, and professional resume. And those are the 3 things they are considering in that first round before the virtual studio visits in the submittable application. So your work samples should show the jury panel your consistent artistic excellence and merit, clarity and uniqueness of vision. Videos are also a great way to interact with the book's physicality and to show the jurors the dimension of the book. Your artist statement should show the jury panel clarity and uniqueness of vision and commitment to your practice. And then your professional resume is where you are demonstrating that you are a mid-career artist, so it should show your professional artistic accomplishment and commitment to your practice. Okay, so jumping into the instructions, again, deadline Wednesday, February 26th at 11:59 p.m. Please make sure to get applications in by then. So the application requirements, again, proof of Minnesota residency, resume, artist statement, and 10 work samples / video samples. So your artist statement, you need to submit a current artist statement that speaks to the images you are submitting. Artist statements are 500 words. Describe how the fellowship will affect you and your work, Address at least one of the following statements slash questions. Describe the future direction of your work. What will you do with the funds? How will the fellowship programming benefit your practice? Why is this a pivotal moment in your practice where receiving this fellowship will make a difference? So in general, what I notice what jurors tend to think of as a strong artist statement is a statement that introduces who you are and what your work is, um, and that addresses the work samples you are showing directly. So I always tell people it is okay to say, I do X, Y, and Z as seen in image one. Make it as easy for them as possible to connect what you are visually showing them to what you are writing about. And then statements that make a good case for yourself as to why this is the right opportunity for you now. Maybe that is because you are going through a transition in your practice. Maybe it is because your kids are finally old enough and you have less caretaking responsibility and you can devote more time to your practice. So any kind of transition is good to emphasize to explain why this is right for you now. Okay, your work samples. So there are 10 work samples. So you must include clear and professional work samples that have been made within the last 10 years. If you need to do documentation on your work, Springboard for the Arts is a great resource to have documentation. They have photo equipment that can be borrowed. They have a documentation lab, so please look into that if you need help with documentation. So work samples can be any combination of image, audio, video, and PDF formats. So to make this as fair as possible, and because book arts can be so hard to show, there are many options of what you can do. So 1 minute of audio is equal to 1 minute of video, which is equal to one still image, which is equal to one page in written text in PDF format. So what does that mean? That means you could do 3 minutes of video and 7 still images. That adds up to 10. You could do 5 minutes of video and 2 pages of written text to do a writing sample of what's in one of the artist books and 3 still images. That adds up to 10. So any combination of that you feel like will best show your documentation and your work is acceptable. Okay. To apply, you will go to bookarts.submittable.com. If you have not used Submittable before, you make a free account and then you can complete the application. It is quite user-friendly, but if you get in and have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on anything on the actual application within Submittable. Our guidelines are on the website and also linked within the submittable application. Please do read those guidelines carefully. There is a lot of specific information in there. I am now going to go through the two 2024 fellows applications as examples to give you an idea of what all the application materials look like coming together. And I think they are good examples because their practices are very different and they are at very different points of being a mid-career book artist. So I will start with Wen Lee's. I'll go through the images first so you can see how she built her work samples, how they come together. You can see the full image and then the detail. It's perfectly fine to do combination of details and images of the full piece. So those were her work samples. You can see, I think she's kind of in the sweet spot. I think she shows 3 or 4 bodies of work and pieces of work. For those 10 work samples, you do not have to show 10 different pieces or 10 different bodies of work. I actually feel like I would advise you not to and sort of pick 3 to 4 bodies or pieces to show and show them a little more deeply and talk about them a little more deeply than rather than showing everything you've done and everything you can do. I think some people fall into that trap where they're trying to show 10 different things because they want to show like that I've done a lot, I have a lot of breadth in my practice, but I think that tends to lead the jurors to asking more questions than necessary about what you're trying to do with your practice. So there should be some variety, but I also think there should be a good amount of cohesion. So that's why I think 3 to 4 bodies of work tends to be the sweet spot. Here is Wenli's artist statement. So you can see the first paragraph, she introduces, it's kind of her introduction to herself and her practice, formerly trained in foreign language and literature, saying what she is and what she's about. Sometimes that's very tied to your practice, sometimes that's not, but I think giving the jurors a good idea for who you are and what your practice is, both and how they work together, just gives them a better idea and picture of you and like encourages them to want to support you as an artist and person. So she writes, inspired by cinema, poetry, family history, and personal experience, linked by blood to a dying indigenous Taiwanese tribe, shifting under the constant flux of a small socio-political environment considered by some not to exist Taiwan. So a little bit of her background, what themes drive her practice, and then she really jumps into a lot of specifics of what she would do with the fellowship, which is great because like sort of the more you intrigue the jurors and get them thinking about how you're going to use it, the more they're going to want to support you and give you the award and hear more about it in your studio visit. So she says, if awarded, she would make something significant and sophisticated, more experimental in respect to the broadness of an interdisciplinary application of mediums and methods of display. She's going to further develop previous work, and then how she's actually going to use some of the benefits of the fellowship, specifically of how she's going to use the studios in MCPA. And then she addresses why this is a pivotal moment for her in her practice. In the last paragraph, that's strained by social and economic statuses from keeping me from becoming a full-time artist, not to mention a barrier of language and cultural norms. If I receive this important support, I can devote myself to art making, building up an art community that has been strained by the global pandemic, and art education for the public. So she does well those in answering those questions that I listed previously on the artist statement slide. And then resume, just showing that just proof of having at least 8 years of sustained experience in book arts. That's really all the resume is for. I tend jurors aren't really looking for anything specific with the resumes, like any specific number of grants or anything like that, just evidence that you have been sustaining your practice in various ways for 8+ years. And then Karen Worth, who's a much later stage but mid-career artist. Here and very different work. Here are her work samples. And then her artist statement. Again, books have been the anchor of my practice for over 40 years. Sometimes they take the form of edition books, installation, or even architecture, critical thinking about embodied thought, word and image, function and imagination, sequence patterning, all spin out of critical consciousness of the book. I think that's also, she did that smartly because her book work often does look like installation or something different than a bound book. So addressing still, if that's what your practice looks like, if it's very, very, very interdisciplinary, go back and you need to explain how it is still rooted in the book in some way. She talks a little bit of her background and then kind of gets into from here on why this important opportunity is important now, that she's going to be having a solo retrospective exhibition at Open Book, for the building's 25-year anniversary. And then she's also exploring a new direction and developing out of another ongoing body of work, and explaining that. And then I think she smartly ties it together to say, by to be ending and starting simultaneously feels so right at this stage of my career and frankly my life. Um, that she's talking about both. She's talking about what she has done. I think if she had stopped at what she has done and how she has this retrospective, this application would have been a lot less attractive to jurors, because it's really only addressing what she's done and not what she will be doing in the fellowship. But because she is saying, I've done all of this and now I'm transitioning and doing different things, they really wanted to support that new step in her career and showing that she's still, even though she's much later mid-career and has done a lot, she is still has further steps to make in her career and more things she wants to do. Okay, so those are the two applications from last year of the fellows that were selected. Please let me know if you guys have any specific questions, anything I can help you out with, or anything else I should talk about. Yes, go ahead.
Hey, Annika. Thank you so much for the
Oh, I
information.
can't hear you.
No? Can you hear me now?
I cannot. And it does not say you are muted, so I don't know why.
Weird.
If you
I'll
can't figure it out, put it in the chat. Yes. Any other questions in the meantime? Can you hear me?